The fishing is not good because of the oil spill. They're killing most of the fish. And we don't even have big fish again, just small ones. Oh yeah, what about good at Can it dip out? Sometimes the oil will be all over the fish. So you have to wash the fish, maybe with Omo. They're talking in the news that we have produced 1,000 or 1 million barrels of oil today. But instead of we being rich, we are getting more poor.
Layefa is describing a phenomenon known as the resource curse. Paradoxically, finding oil usually increases a country's poverty, as the oil wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few, so the agriculture, education and health system of the country become neglected and often collapse. The local people's health problems are compounded by gas flares, burning night and day throughout the Niger Delta. Asthma, bronchitis, skin diseases and cancer have all been linked. That gas is found alongside oil, but as it's dangerous to transport, it can't easily be sold to overseas markets. It could be used for cooking and heating within Nigeria, but building the infrastructure is expensive, so the oil companies just burn it off. The flares emit about 70 million tons of carbon dioxide every year, more than the annual emissions from 10 million British homes.
Because they have money and they have strong companies, they just do whatever they like.
Why are American cities designed so it's almost impossible not to have a car? Why were 100 railways in cities like New York, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles bought up and then deliberately destroyed? Why did the electric car get scrapped? Why were we, along with Australia, the only two countries not to sign the original Kyoto Climate Treaty? Why was an oil company lobbyist allowed to change official government reports on global warming? Why was the same PR firm employed by the tobacco industry to persuade the public that smoking is healthy, then employed by the oil industry to convince us there was still doubt about climate change? Alternative energy has been available for 50 years. Why have we barely used it? Why were solar panels taken off the White House? Because, right from the early days of the industry, the oil men and their obscene profits have had an unhealthy influence on the people running our country. And now, they are the people running our country. And they're providing the cash, too. The oil business isn't just in bed with the government, it is the government.
Human history is littered with the corpses of people who had stuff worth stealing. Animals. Water. Shiny things. Fertile land. Spices.
Nutmeg slice. Tea?
But when it came to stuff worth pinching, one continent had it all. Ivory, copper, cotton, rubber, wood, tin, gold, diamonds, and people. As cheap energy, slaves were unbeatable, until a less troublesome energy source was discovered and a new era began. Human numbers increased 5 times over, and with each person wanting more and more stuff, oil became the resource worth fighting for all around the world.
to war in Iraq? According to former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan, it's simple. Three-letter answer, not WMD, it's OIL.
I am saddened that it's politically inconvenient to acknowledge what everyone knows, that the Iraq war is largely about oil.
You might read the ex-chairman of Shell that said over the weekend that oil could hit over $150 a barrel as world production begins to peak. Not really good news for a country whose entire economy, not to mention its entire way of life, is based on cheap oil.
We had an unspoken collective pact to pretend climate change wasn't happening, as though as long as we ignored it hard enough, it wouldn't be true. Not absolutely everyone. A few were shouting, "Fire!"
Hello, come on in. One of the greatest difficulties with climate change is that the effects of our emissions today are not actually realised in terms of the temperature for 30 to 40 years, so there's this time lag in the system, which makes it difficult for us humans to respond because we're evolutionarily equipped to deal with very immediate threats like advancing armies or dangerous animals. We're not so well equipped with dealing rationally with very long-term problems like climate change. So we have to act now to stop something happening in the future. If we wait until the full temperature effects are already upon us, then it's far too late to stop. If you remember one single number above all else, make it 2 degrees. Now, everyone in the world, pretty much, the European Union, big multinational corporations, Greenpeace, political parties, all agree that we have to stabilise global temperatures within 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. And the reason for that is because if you cross that threshold, then there are tipping points in the Earth system which could drive the warming process essentially out of control. Huge amounts of carbon could be coming out of the world's trees and the soils, methane could be coming out of the permafrost in Siberia, and it's that extra input of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere which then leads us up the worst case scenarios to 6 or more degrees and the eventual wipeout of most of life on Earth. So our emissions have been going up between, let's say, 1950 and now. They need to level out, stabilise, and then decline just as rapidly to sustainable levels, about an 80% cut by 2050. But crucially, to keep the temperature rise within 2 degrees, this point of stabilisation needs to be at around 2015. And so that means really the timeline we've got, ticking clock, is that we have to stabilise global emissions within just 7 years from now, as we speak, 2008. And the scale of this task to achieve a transformation to a low-carbon economy for the entirety of human civilization is obviously it's a huge monumental task, probably the greatest that humanity's ever faced.